I came home from work one evening, and I don't know for what reason, but when I took my bra off, I felt my breasts, and I found a 9 centimeter tumor in my right breast.
Wow. And
Yes.
were you doing self breast exams prior to?
No, I was not. I wasn't. And I was single. I was not sexually active. And I wasn't having mammograms either because I was under 40 and there's no breast cancer in my family. So
Yeah.
mm-mm.
I know. I feel like I mean, I wasn't really doing self breast exams either. I didn't really know much about it. I hear that people have breast cancer, but I didn't even know the difference between a lumpectomy or mastectomy. These were just like not part of my vocabulary.
Me
And
too.
my primary care would do, when I go in just once a year for my checkup, she would kind of do the self breast exam and feel around, and that was really all I did.
Me too. That was it. I just relied on my OBGYN to do that exam once a year. And that's why we think it was hard to tell, right? If it had been growing inside, how quickly did it form? Because I was stage 3 HER2 positive. And you know how they measure your
Mm,
breast like a clock? At 3 o'clock, mine felt like my elbow. I
three.
mean,
Okay.
the lump was just like right on the edge of my areola, just
Wow.
hard. You could knock on it. It was
Yeah, and so
scary.
it felt like, if you put your hand at the bottom
Hmm.
of your elbow, I thought that was a great analogy where, people say it feels like a pea or a hard rock. The elbow is a good one. I also heard sometimes like the tip of your nose, like could feel a little bit like, depending
Oh,
on different textures and everything too, depending on how
that's a
hard
good
it
one.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. I never thought of that.
So when we're educating people, right, of like, okay, we do self exams, what is it
Mhm.
supposed to feel like? I hear also from other women, sometimes our breasts are lumpy or things don't always feel normal and it's hard to detect. So it's nice to have different ideas and imagery of what the lump could potentially feel like.
Yes, and what I learned was that I don't have very dense breasts along this path, so it was I mean it was there. You could really feel it.
Wow. And 9 centimeters is significant. Did it seem like it just showed up one day? Like,
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yeah,
that's,
it was just like, hey.
I know.
and I and I just knew.
Did you Google or how did you know? Like, what was your immediate thought? You took off your bra, you felt this lump, and
Mhm.
what was
I
going through your
just
head?
It was a Saturday evening, and I just thought, oh my God, this is it. Holy cow. And then you have these, you can't let your mind go too many places, but I was at my doctor first thing on Monday morning to have the exam, but there's just moments in your life when life comes knocking at your door and gives you a check, and you just know.
Right. You almost get in like survival mode right away. Like you don't have time to process what is happening, except I'm going to call my doctors. We're going to get this figured out. We're going to take
Mhm.
action. And
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Totally.
And sometimes it's when that treatment ends. I know we want to talk a little bit about like survivorship or life after your diagnosis, but that's really when it hit me that I actually had cancer. I was in this like 18-month of like fight or flight mode of just getting through it. And then when it ended, I was like, whoa, I just went through something incredibly significant trauma. Like it's crazy. And I'm still recovering from it.
Mhm.
So
Recovery is just a totally different situation because then you're like, whoa, I have PTSD. I might have some fear of like irrational fear of machinery. I might not recognize myself. I don't even, it's a massive wake up call. So your whole life has shifted and you almost cannot go back to I could not go back to where I came from. I'll only speak for myself, but it was like, no, well, you need a new life now.
it's amazing too that this lump just appears out of nowhere. I'm still trying to understand in my own research and conversations with women and medical professionals, how do we go from like zero and nothing to stage 3, right? Like there were no other symptoms or anything else that kind of showed we weren't getting regular screenings or mammograms because of our age, if there's no family
Mm-hmm.
history, etc. And so it still just baffles me to hear these stories of women where we want to do a lot of advocacy work because there's so many, I think it's about 11% of those diagnosed with breast cancer are under the age of 40 right now.
We are just getting younger and younger. I've been in the doctor's office before, and my my oncologist has brought me in to speak with a woman who's had my diagnosis, and this lady's been 26.
Wow.
26. This is for me. I really feel like, okay, so HER2 is a protein gene that we carry in our hearts, men and women. That gene goes mutant out of a toxic environment.
Mm.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had to let that sentence resonate with me. And when I think about, do I want to drink alcohol? Do I want to eat that? Do I want to do this, perform it, think like this? Like, I believe that, you know, a dysregulated nervous system led to my diagnosis. I believe I was really eating and drinking a really inflammatory kind of diet to my system. And I do believe that that toxic environment, my environment, that was a huge wake up call for me to change everything I was doing.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that, like life before cancer. I know we never want to place blame on ourselves in terms of
I
why
know.
we are getting the certain diagnoses that we've been given. I also caution too when talking to other people, when I expressed that I had breast cancer, I was a pretty strict vegan. And even talking to other women, their immediate reaction was, well, you must have been having like too much soy in your diet. Or they're trying to pinpoint what it was that I did, quote unquote, wrong to ensure that they don't do that too, which is this really interesting like relationship with, friends, family, like anyone who wants to talk to you about it. And you bring up
It's
some really great points about, the inflammatory foods, alcohol, but I would love to kind of dive a little bit more about as you're kind of reflecting on the
okay.
life before cancer.
Yes, and I will say too, to add on to what you said, in my studies, what I've learned is, and I mean, we are all different. We are all different. What's going to work for me might not work for others. And so this is just a totally personal experience. But, you know, I lived for years thinking that I was healthy. And that I was happy. There was even a couple of years where I was a vegetarian. But I drank. Alcohol was a definite thread throughout my life, whether that was wine or bourbon or just whatever. And I didn't have like an addiction to alcohol, but I just knew how to drink and have fun and be social. And I've always had really great friendships. And so I've had solid friends and people around me for a long time. I worked for a really nice wine bar here in Austin that's family owned and locally owned. And I'm supported by a great community. So when I got the diagnosis on that front, I was super good. But I was just also, not listening really to the anxiety that I was living with, to the way that I was like not very grounded and not having a great relationship to source and God, and really like exercising that tool. And so I was pretty disconnected on some levels, on a lot of levels, actually.
Yeah. And when did this reflection happen? Was that shortly after your diagnosis or years after your diagnosis as you're trying to connect the dots?
It's really come through recovery. It really came through recovery and me having to take a harder look at my life and everything, mind, body, soul. Like, how am I thinking, and rewiring some of those beliefs and fears that hold me back, and just really doing the work, really turning inside and doing the work.
You have such an interesting experience kind of combining the naturopath medicine and complementary integrative care with your more Western medicine approach. I was reading the list of chemotherapy drugs that you were on. Were very similar in that alphabet soup of being given, the six different drugs plus a year of Herceptin to really fight the cancer.
They
Yeah.
really take you to the edge in some cases. I mean, he told me, my oncologist said, we're going to take you, get ready. this is going to be challenging, because when I went to him, he was the fourth doctor that I'd seen. And I really encourage people to find the doctors that you can really connect with, because it's important that you do that. So I'd seen breast specialists, and I finally found him, and I had these very romantic, grandiose ideas that I was going to do it naturally. It was October. I didn't have any insurance. And I was like, just give me until January. Let me see what I can do. I'm just armed with all these books and knowledge. And in January, if I haven't done a good job, I'll do everything you tell me to, but just give me the chance. And he said, I love your enthusiasm, but you won't make it, Jennifer. You'll be dead by January. You don't have that kind of cancer.
Wow. Because it was stage 3 and HER2 positive and incredibly aggressive.
Incredibly aggressive. Yeah. So it was port the next week. I actually was working with a naturopath though before I found my oncologist, and he specialized in cancer. So he really knew about like the cell inhibitors and how it all kind of worked. And he put me on a ton of things. I don't even know what they all were. And so I found my oncologist, got my port, and I was in chemo the next week.
Wow.
And, lost my hair, all the kind of normal things. But then I found a foundation called the Maderi Foundation. And they worked with me. They had all the access to anything my doctors did, pathology, blood work, and so any scans, and gave me tonics and teas and things to really help my internal system be able to balance with, it's heavy. This stuff is so heavy. And I don't know if you started to experience like low back pain, but the low back pain was actually my kidneys just getting beat up by all of it. So there was a special tea blend that they gave me that I was just able to buy separately at a tea shop here in Austin. And it relieves my low back pain. Herceptin responds very well to olives and olive oil. So if you add that into your diet, it makes Herceptin stronger, is what they told me.
Wow.
So if I couldn't do anything on any given day, it was at least a tablespoon of olive oil and some water. Because there's some days you just can't.
Completely. Yeah.
You just can't do it.
There were days I
water,
would walk
nothing.
from the bed to the couch back to the bed. Like that was my day. And
yeah, you barely go to the bathroom because like you can't even get the water down anymore. It was hard.
The fatigue and exhaustion is real.
It's real.
I'm curious to know more about your experience with a naturopath as well. That is something that I'm curious and to learn more about personally. And I'm trying to figure out also financially how to make it happen. But now that I've gone through all of the chemotherapies, my body's still recovering. I feel like I am incredibly toxic. I have put on so much chemotherapy weight from the steroids that I'm on. I've started taking letrozole, which is one of the aromatase inhibitors for ER positive breast cancer. And so it forced me into menopause. I'm concerned about my bone health. I'm concerned about just like everything that kind of comes with like the aftermath of the diagnosis. And I think having that integrative care, working with supplements, working with different teas and things that are natural to kind of get my body back to use your words, like a place that I recognize myself in.
Yes. So I think it's really important to add lymphatic drainage massage if you can you don't even have to go to a practitioner. If you get a dry body brush, those giant long brushes, you can just massage your lymphatic drainage system. You can easily palpate it even with your fingers here. And you don't want to go to a 10 intensity. We're talking about like a level 3, right? Also, cold showers are very good. Even if you can do cold oscillating into warm for like 10 and 15 seconds. And then for getting back to get to know yourself, one thing is really important. I would say have a photo shoot so that you know what you look like now. If you might be like me, there are tons of photos around your house that show another lady. It's not even a lady that mentally sometimes I connect with. I look at her and I'm like, wow, she's so different from who I am right now. And so I think looking at yourself feels really good. And then I think embodiment practices, somatic practices, where you're doing somatic healing of the body, you can really start to feel where you might be holding on to things and move that through the body. I also really like to have a grief practice. Every morning after I pray, I, for 30 seconds, grieve. A
Mm.
lot of times I grieve that young lady who got breast cancer, the person I was before I got breast cancer, and just apologize to myself and be easier to myself. You know, it's really, you have to be easier to yourself, you know, and food and diet, water is everything.
Yeah,
As you mentioned with supplements, you need supplements. Our food is not going to give you what you need in our.
I'm with you. Absolutely. And
Mhm.
it's finding that right combination too of foods that work for you. And
Absolutely.
it, I went from being a vegan pre-diagnosis to so angry that this lifestyle I was living failed me. There was a lot of anger around that piece. My boyfriend was a vegan. He has like tipped the scale. He's like eating meat, hamburgers, steak, everything right now. It's kind of funny. But I'm still now trying to figure out, what is this new life of mine? What does that mean? Am I going to be incorporating more dairy now that I'm concerned about osteoporosis and needing to get different sources of calcium outside of just like the green leafy vegetables? I'm trying to figure out, now that I've had breast surgery, the yoga practice that I was really good at has taken a toll because I can't do those like chaturanga push-ups, and the whole chest area it's become almost like a trigger point where this thing that I used to love to do is now reminding me of all the things that I've lost. And I think having that grief practice, I'm going to incorporate that. That's such a great idea, to just acknowledge what we can and cannot do and to come to peace with new activities. And maybe it was not the high intensity vinyasa flow I used to be great at. And now it's more of a meditative sitting practice and breathing practice and healing that way. You
Yes.
you too have experience with yoga. You're a yoga practitioner, teacher as
Hmm.
well.
Yes. And I found when I was going back to working out, same thing, I can't open my arm. I used to be able to lay both arms down and twist at the end. No, now it was like elbow in, just let it open
Yeah.
slowly, slowly, slowly. And it took years to get some of that back. But also, weight training in any form is very important for your bones. It's important, and to stay away from commercialized dairy is
Mm-hmm.
is important too. But one thing too, I want to teach you something. This will help to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system and calm you down when you get into a kind of a state where you just need to sit and breathe. So just sit up nice and straight for just a minute. And everyone can do this. This is for all of us. And this stimulates your vagus nerve, which I'll explain after this. So just take an inhale and exhale and just let everything out. Right? Okay. Now I want you to take your tongue, and we're going to do tongue circles, 3 big tongue circles in each direction. And every time you circle your tongue, I want you to, don't forget to breathe in your belly. Think about, just let your navel relax, let your body relax. We're breathing into the navel, and we're going to take the tongue to the front teeth and do big circle all the way around the front of the teeth. Just think about washing the whole mouth. Try and reach further with each circle. That's exactly right. Last one. Don't forget to breathe. And now we'll change direction, 3 circles. There you go. Think about really reaching back and just washing the teeth over with the tongue. Yes, last one. Okay, relax. Breathe deeply into the belly through the nose. That is just a really simple thing I do even before I meditate. You can also hold the tongue fully to the roof of the mouth for 5 seconds. It's just a nice way. It, like I said, it kicks your parasympathetic nervous system in, that resting system, and you just relax.
I don't think I've ever done that. I feel like my
Mm-hmm.
jaw, my tongue, like that was a nice exercise.
Yeah, yeah, good, good. And I feel like in vagus nerve simulation, just getting back to connecting with ourselves, trauma has a way in the brain of kind of re-scrambling. And so when you've been through something traumatic, such as treatment and really many things, it can kind of separate you a little bit, right? It just kind of it that's why the identity thing I think is so. Was that big for you? That was big for me when I was coming back with, I never looked like this.
Right. Yeah, it's every single day. You know, I look at pictures of the past and I miss that woman. I miss that body. I miss that joy to be that I had, and I'm still struggling with that. I need to work on, and I'm learning so much from you in just this conversation of how can we turn inwards and do some of that, healing process from within. I think you mentioned earlier, what was it, the somatic practice?
Somatic practices. Somatic means of the body. So when you do a somatic meditation, and I mean, we're talking about, like I said, go as far as intensity level, really only starting with, something that might have annoyed you earlier in the day, right? Not that major. That way you're kind of working it out, working it up, because somewhere in your body, you are holding on to things. And your body, if you just sit and listen to it and ask it, it will give you the answers. It's particularly, I find, just place your hand on your heart, take a moment to just take a breath and be silent and just say, what do you need from me? Where, where are you hurting? Where can you feel this? Sometimes you'll find that it might be in the back of your calf or in your shoulder or in your neck, or maybe you're finding tension in your head, or and as far as that drill that we just did, there are several drills that I have learned that it's one of the things that I teach. It's the applied neurology. It's just training to be more resilient in the way you handle stress and getting back that connection that we've lost by connecting our body.
Mm. I love the idea of doing a photo shoot. Like, yes, get those pictures of what we are now
Mm-hmm.
around the house, and
Yes.
start loving that person that you're
Mm-hmm.
becoming.
Yes. And look at her, honor her, because you have been through a lot. We've
Yes.
been through a lot, and it's amazing. It's really a positive inconvenience in the end of it. It's like, but we can heal. Healing is possible. Change is possible. Reconnection is possible. We can do it.
A lot of people ask me, when am I going to feel normal again? And I think what I'm hearing in this conversation is that that too is a journey. There isn't going to be a date where 1 year post treatment you're going to feel like yourself again. I just celebrated 4 years since my own diagnosis. I know you're a couple years out as well. And here we are having this great conversation
Awesome.
about healing. And we're still in that process of, acceptance and apology and grief, and it's a daily practice, I think.
It is. It really is. And as far as the fatigue goes too, I mean, gosh, it was years before
Mm,
I felt like, man, that's probably just happened. And I was diagnosed at the end of 2014. It's never going to be the
yeah.
same.
You mentioned earlier in the podcast having a little bit of anxiety around machinery. I know that this sounded like some anxiety that bubbled up when you were going through radiation. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
That was hard. That was so hard, laying on that table sometimes, and it's just like moving around you. The first time I went to the dentist, they've got the things right in your mouth,
Yeah.
and it's like all of a sudden here comes this real thing going around my face, and I was like,
Oh,
oh
geez.
my God, oh my God. It was like Terminator at the dentist. I don't know. I really had a massive panic attack at the dentist. I mean, by the time she got back, I was just like, oh,
That's
at
so
that time,
funny.
I wasn't doing applied neurology. I wasn't meditating yet. I was still just like kind of relying on my Xanax prescription or,
Yes.
and I thought, God, I should have taken something. I didn't think this was going to happen.
Oh my
It
God,
happens
it's
out of nowhere.
out of the blue. And it's so funny that you
Mhm.
mentioned the dentist too. I had a breakdown of the dentist also. So for anyone listening, watch out next time you go to the dentist. But they were,
Do some breathing.
oh my gosh, I had no idea, right? Because you're like, this is a different type of doctor. I'm not going to my
Mhm.
infusion chair. I'm just getting my teeth cleaned. And I, I think they were trying to tell me that I had like some issues, potentially a cavity, like something was going on. And I just lost it. I was like, one more health issue that just came out of nowhere. The poor,
Mhm.
like it wasn't the dentist, like the tech person, like the poor tech person was like, oh my God, I didn't mean to deliver like the worst news ever. I just start bawling and crying. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
just can't believe I have a cavity. And it's like one thing after another. It had nothing to do with the cavity. It had everything to do with the lead up to what is going on with my body and
Mhm.
all of this. But oh God, she probably went home that day and was like, this poor patient of mine.
Mine too. It's funny, but yeah, it's very scary. And when it comes on, it's just like,
Yeah.
and you mentioned too, the chemo-induced menopause. I mean, the anxiety that comes along with that too is just, I mean, really?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? And then eventually my body has never really regulated itself back. And in fact, this whole year I went from Christmas, I had a period at Christmas, and then I went all the way until September, and
Oh
boom.
wow.
I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So it's just never, that was hard. That chemo-induced menopause was hard, hard, hard.
Absolutely. Now, are you taking any medications now for no?
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, just supplements in your practice and meditation.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
And looking
Yeah.
and feeling great, which is amazing.
Yeah, I feel really good. I feel different and better than I've really felt in a long
Mm-hmm.
time. In a long time.
Yeah. So since your diagnosis, and correct me if my timeline is wrong here too, but since your diagnosis, it sounds like you started going deeper into like the health and wellness journey that you're discovering with getting certified as a Pilates instructor, and then as well as a holistic life coach.
Yes, I've always loved just learning. And I got my yoga certification before I was diagnosed, and then I got into Pilates, was part of my healing journey. And Pilates is a really deep look at anatomy, and
Mm-hmm.
through there I found Z Health, which is the applied neurology. And instead of using that for better performance in athletics, I'm using it for better performance through behavioral change and just kind of in your life.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's really interesting. Gaze fixations and your ability to hold a gaze without the eyes going staccato is like, think about even just like reading and being able to retain that paragraph, that book, that magazine. A lot of people don't even read these days, are Audible and stuff.
Yes.
And nothing against it. I'm totally an Audible user myself. I love it actually for my driving. But
Yeah.
also those unfinished DIY projects, that gaze fixation lives in the same part of your brain as commitment and follow
Mm.
through, which all of those fall into. So by training your eyes, which is like the largest stimulus to your brain through your central nervous system, we can improve so many things. I mean,
Wow.
just so many things. And so the Z Health has helped me a lot. And then Paul Chek, if anyone out there is familiar with him, he is just extraordinary. I mean, he is a wealth of information. His YouTube channel will give you tons of information. And so I went on to learn under him for my holistic lifestyle coaching, because I just feel like he really embodies mind, body, soul, unlike any other practitioner, really. And he's been at it in the
Yeah.
game for so long.
Excellent. And so now you're working with clients and helping them with some of these
Mhm.
behavioral changes and self-discovery.
Yes, I don't strictly work with breast cancer survivors, but I really like to be on the other side of women's healing because it's something that I can so deeply connect with. So I
Yeah.
just get it, or I've seen it or worked with, I volunteer here with a group. And so I try and stay connected.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. I was having a conversation just yesterday about breast cancer and how, you know, I started our own nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org. We have the podcast, Breast Cancer Conversations. And I'm like, I think I'm ready to go into like women's health. Like breast
Mm-hmm.
cancer was that catalyst to get us here. And there is so much more work and information and sharing and knowledge that can go beyond just the breast cancer, but the ovarian cancer, women's health, even you know, talking about pregnancy or the grief that we have through miscarriage. Like there is so much as women that we carry that we don't really acknowledge and talk about, and we need to create that space. And yeah, like the life after diagnosis is like the trajectory to empowerment. Like I just really
Mm-hmm.
feel like we have, I don't know, like when you're faced with your own mortality, you're like, life is short. Let's just make a difference.
I could not agree with you more. Everything you just said, 100%. We need to share and talk and connect and feel like, your voice is important. It's important that you find another lady. It's one thing about survivors too. There is always a group near you, even if you got on your Facebook page, and there is someone, and we love to help other people, because there's also too, I don't know if you felt like this, but there's also some survivor's guilt that can sometimes creep up on you. And I have found that even as I have given back in the past few years, going back, it gets easier and easier for me. But in the beginning, it was really hard to stay connected.
I think survivor's guilt is a term that, yes, let's talk about that. How do you define survivor's guilt?
You just wonder, how did you make it through this? It's hard.
Yeah.
It's tough. And there's no difference between us, between you and me. There's nothing. We're the same. There's no soul on this earth that has come here that is greater than yours, and there's not one that's lesser than yours. We are equal, and our bodies are so different, but it's just the way that we respond. And also being an empath too, and you've been through it, so you're compassionate to the other person, and you're just like, there's that moment where you really have to say thank you and pray for this community, because
Yeah.
we're under threat.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the survivor's guilt too is real. I remember still going through that of not really the why me, but especially as I'm looking at like our friends with metastatic breast cancer that are passing, they with their 22% survival rate in 5 years, is like, okay, how come we caught ours prior to it metastasizing? So there is a level for me of guilt around, well, what if I didn't speak up? What if I didn't pester my primary care to write the prescription for me to get a mammogram? Like, what if I just kept living my life? Like something triggered in us, right, to make us take action.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it's probably something bigger than us that we don't need to know the answer for. But there's, or even like with recurrence too, right? Like, why do some people have breast cancer recurrence where others do not? There's just so much,
It's so much,
yeah,
and it's so interwoven into things that we just don't know. And as individuals, we are individual.
for sure.
Our stresses, our threat responses, our food, our bodies. I learned under Paul Chek, there's 19 different types of stomachs. They're not
Yeah.
talking to us about that. And my doctor wasn't speaking to me. My oncologist, I would ask her about my diet, but she wasn't interested in speaking to that with me. That's why I had to seek outside information and to work with other people, and to just know that I need to support my body.
Did you end up seeing a nutritionist, or how did you learn about the inflammatory foods and how your body was responding to them?
What I did was I started reading Eat Right for Your Blood Type. Dr. Peter D'Adamo wrote that book. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but what I did was I look at my blood type, and what they do in the book is they list every single food, protein, dairy, seeds, nuts, oils, everything. and to beneficial, neutral, or avoid. And what I found was, as I looked at the list, I ate off that avoid list when I was a carnivore, when I was a vegetarian, I ate off
Mm-hmm.
that avoid list. And so what I did was, I promised myself 90 days on just the beneficial list. And the things that I thought I was going to absolutely not be able to live without, I would put them back into my diet and see how my body responded. I mean, I just had no idea over the years that I was even bloated. I didn't know
Yeah.
what that felt like until I wasn't. And I didn't know what inflammation was until I ate something. And now I'm just like, now I can mostly eat something, and I will punish myself sometimes. I love French fries.
Oh yeah.
I can't help it. I need at least to have a few. So I haven't conquered it entirely, but I've just learned what it feels like to have an inflammatory response in my body and listen to those foods.
I'm inspired by it. I have this one book called Lifestyle Medicine that I've been following, and it talks a little bit more about the diet and different things that we can start incorporating. And it's not just utilizing medicine to treat cancer, but what is that lifestyle full wellness journey that we take ourselves on, right? It's great if you run 5 miles, but then if you're going to go home and eat ice cream, burgers, and French fries, then like you're kind of canceling each other out, right? So it's more. I love the idea of like this holistic approach to that, to confront health, wellness, mental health. I think it's all, like you were saying, very interconnected. And once we start resolving one problem, it almost is like this positive spiral of like, okay, what else can I change? How can I feel so good when I wake up in the morning and energized? I think for myself too, I'm constantly fatigued, exhausted, tired, and I'm like addressing like, okay, why is this? What am I not nourishing my body with? Because clearly my stress levels are high, or I'm exhausted all the time. So something's not right. And
Right.
when my doctor was like, well, Laura, you have to exercise, like get out there, do your brisk walking. No matter how tired you are, the exercise, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, fights that fatigue level. And I was like,
Well,
that's
but also
amazing.
too, sometimes that working out needs to be working in, maybe maybe you just need to take a little walk and maybe do some Tai Chi,
Yeah.
and start energizing and breathing with the body and thinking about a Tai Chi practice. Paul Chek is brilliant for this if you look him up on YouTube. And maybe turning that focus to working in, because working through fatigue fatigue is a way for your body to kind of say, look, okay, enough, and you don't want to push too far past that, work into it a little bit, because he's right, but when you pick up a weight, pick up a 2-pound weight. Pick up a 3-pound weight. Don't pick up a 10, just
Right.
start lightly. And like I said, that grief practice is huge. Connecting with source is huge, but,
Yeah.
not pushing yourself too hard and making sure that you rest. Rest is hard.
Yes, exactly. Detach, unplug.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about reading earlier. I actually picked up a paperback book to read the other night because my mind was just spinning. And, we're always, especially now with COVID, we're working from home, we're on our computer screens all the time. When I'm not on my computer screen, I'm on my phone catching up on the text messages or social
Mm-hmm.
media. And I was like, I need to just get rid of the screen. I picked up a paperback book. It was like the best thing to just like read without light in my face.
Yes. And that blue light is meant to mimic sunlight, right? That sunlight is going to, like when the sun rises, the sun produces blue light. That is going to stimulate cortisol. Well, what's that
Mm-hmm.
going to do? Wake you up and get you going. They put blue light into our screens so that it wakes us up. It's very cheap for them to create blue light. So that is creating your cortisol production. So get some blue blocker glasses. You can get them for like $15 on Amazon, and that will help so much. Just watch your
Yes.
TV. Like I would say past like 7 or 8 o'clock.
And your point too about the cortisol and how that can also trigger, is that like your stress hormone? And that
Exactly.
has its own deleterious effects on if you're just operating at this higher level of stress, which I know I'm guilty of, then yes, absolutely. Like my gut is going to be misfunctioning and I'm going to be putting on extra weight or just not in tune. So
Mm-hmm.
there's clearly a lot of deep healing that I need to work through. How can I work with you? How can our listeners get in touch with you?
I would love to work with you. I would love to work with anyone. So please, you'll find me on social media. My thing is at Illuminated with Jennifer Wallace. And then my email address, or my webpage is illuminatedwithjenniferwallace.com. And there's several ways that you can get in touch with me. I actually have a call to action on my webpage to share your story. Just getting back to what you said earlier about sharing these threads, the threats that we have all shared too, because as women, we've been through a lot more than just breast cancer survivor. I mean, a lot of gender discrimination.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yes.
mean, assault, sexual abuse, trauma. I mean, and so you can share that with me anonymously or with your name. I would love to hear your story. I would love to hear from all of you. And you can also find links there to work with me. I work with people one-on-one, or I have a 3-month program called Awaken, where we really dive into your nutrition, your movement. I give you drills that really help you every morning reattach. It's a lot of like applied neurology is like lifting weights for your central nervous system. We train it. And every time you train it, you can deal with things easily. Stress is more easy. It's more resilient, your central nervous system. And so that your threat bucket just isn't so big all the time. And it's like, I can handle this.
We've handled cancer, so bring it.
Yes,
we got
yes.
this.
You have totally got this. Healing is possible.
This conversation, this was so, to use your words, enlightening, and I can't wait. I'm definitely going to follow up with you and check out that 3-month course. I think that's a good time frame too, right? You were talking about, it's not just a 60 or 30-day behavioral change. Like, how can we get this into a practice where it becomes like
more natural, like
more
where
natural.
You change your behavior. Yeah. And they say it's anywhere from 66 days to 367 days to make a behavioral change. So that 21-day thing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I was reading a book recently about some psychology and behavioral changes, and they were talking, and I'm not going to get all of the biology correct here, but they were using the example of like bookends. Like when you wake up in the morning and you're going to your car to get to work, you know that you're going to like open your car door, you're going to sit in, you're going to put in like the seatbelt. Like these actions all happen within like the beginning of like the trigger being maybe unlocking your car with your key fob to clicking your seatbelt in. So your brain isn't thinking, I need to take a step, I need to extend my arm, I need to pull, I need to bend my knees, I need to sit, where, maybe as a baby, they're trying to figure out all these little steps. But as we create these habits, we really have these bookends on either end of, okay, so if I want to change this habit of how I get into my car, as an example, you need to kind of
not easy.
Exactly.
Not easy. All these years you have just carved these neural pathways in your brain, and change is very threatening for your brain. It doesn't want you to brush your teeth with your left hand. It does not. You've been doing it with your right all 43 years. No, this is threatening. This little change is threatening. So if you want to change your whole life, no, your brain is going to throw you into major threats that are actually, it thinks it's surviving. So it's like, yeah, hey, binge eat, do something, shut down, get depressed, have anxiety. I need you to not change.
Right, and that's what I'm used to. I'm used to the stress and anxiety.
So that's why we train our central nervous system, right? So we're changing that response so that those neural pathways, that change is not so threatening anymore, and we can get more regulated.
Well, let's do it. This is like step one. I'm going to follow up with you, find out more about your Awaken program.